Hey friends, looking for some great business content other than right here on Accelerate? Then check out C-Suite TV and watch in-depth interviews with business content for C-Suite leaders and entrepreneurs, including an interview with me, your favorite podcast host. And it's all on demand. Watch and get insider secrets on demand by going to csuitetv.com. That's c-suitetv.com. Business insights on demand. Okay, let's do the show. It's time to accelerate. Hi, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 464 of Accelerate, where I hold in-depth conversations with today's leading experts in sales, marketing, and leadership 6 days a week. Hey, a couple quick items before we meet today's guest, Lee Caraher. If you like the show, it would really help out if you subscribe to Accelerate. Please be sure to go to iTunes or do it via the podcast app on your phone. And while you're there, please leave us a review. We really want to hear from you. So, friends, if you're looking for new ideas about how to amp up your sales, then please go to accelerate.fm/spark. Get my free ebook, How to Spark a Sales Turnaround. It's based on my interviews with over 300 sales experts right on this show, and I asked them what they would do to execute a sales turnaround on their business. And I've compiled their recommendations into a practical step-by-step guide that you can use to accelerate your sales today. So don't wait. Go to accelerate.fm/spark to get your free copy of How to Spark a Sales Turnaround. I'm excited to be joined on the show again for the second time by Lee Caraher. You can catch our first conversation on episode 79. Lee is the CEO of Double Forte, a digital agency in San Francisco. She's a keynote speaker and an author. She wrote a book called Millennials and Management, The Essential Guide to Making It Work at Work, which we talked about in our first conversation, I said back in episode 79. And most recently, she wrote The Boomerang Principle, Inspire Lifetime Loyalty from Your Employees. And that's going to be the subject of our conversation today. Lee, welcome to Accelerate, or should I say, welcome back to Accelerate.
Andy, it is so great to be back with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, yeah, and as I'd mentioned, I think once before, is you make me feel lazy. Because since the time I published my last book, you've written 2 books and published them. So I'm getting off this. I'm working on my 3rd book, but as soon as this interview's done, I'm getting back and writing. So,
but you have 400 episodes of your podcast, so I know where the time has gone.
True, that's true. I probably could have written 10 books in that time, but
there you go. There you go.
But I wouldn't have. But yeah. All right. So I really like this book that you wrote because it certainly reflects some experience that I've had with some companies I've worked with. And so let's just sort of dive into it. What is the Boomerang Principle?
The Boomerang Principle is the concept that companies or organizations that encourage and allow former employees to return have a strategic advantage over those that don't. In a nutshell. In a nutshell.
Okay, so welcoming back people that left under some set of circumstances to come back into the fold. And yeah, I mean, on the surface of it, you can see some benefits. I mean, certainly shorter time to onboard and ramp them up for sure.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you find that when people come back, is the research showing that if somebody returns to a company, they actually end up staying longer?
So a few things about people who return. One is they do have a shorter onboarding, but you have to remember that they're coming back to something different than what they left. Mm-hmm. So you have to be intentional about that. The residual goodness halo effect of someone who is a high performer who returns to you, because one assumes you're only hiring high performers, who returns to you is so positive for existing employees. Like, oh, wow, it's not, it's good here. It's good here. That has a huge residual effect that we're just starting to measure now. And then what we have seen is there's not a whole lot of research on this, from major organizations and institutions, but the people I talked to who were boomerangs all stayed longer the second or even third time than their first set of tenure.
It's like going back home and living with your parents.
Well, hopefully.
Except probably those are shorter increments on the subsequent
ones. Lord. Oh my gosh. I have a 19-year-old. I'm just, oh my gosh.
Your time is coming. Yeah, yes.
My time is coming. Well, I think that it's, hopefully it's not exactly like your parents, but a career over time, if a career, and if you're 25 today, you're looking at maybe 50 more years of career, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Truly.
Yes.
So we cannot imagine that one company could hold our interest in our career for a whole 50 years. Also, we cannot imagine that we would not, all of us would not actually need skills that our current employer can't give us at a certain point in time in our career, because they just don't do that. And thirdly, just because you're not the right person at the right time for the company that you're at now, and it's time to go, does not mean you won't be the best person at the right time later when the company has moved forward in some way and you have also progressed in another way. So something to think about, where I think before, for my generation, I'm a boomer, we never really thought about returning. It wasn't sort of the idea. But today, I think we should all be thinking, employees should be thinking about, as they craft their career, not just dismissing the fact that they've been at a company so they can't go back. And employers should be thinking about a talent pool that is benefited by an alumni group that is already predisposed towards it. So if we can think about those kinds of things, then what we are doing is actually creating better cultures for companies that people who are working there exist in, because a company that is good to return to is a company that is hard to leave. And the more we can be thinking about that, the less friction we have in our organizations, the more profit and efficiency we have, which is what we're all looking for.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm unpacking everything because, you're
unpacking everything.
Yeah, you summarized the book very nicely. So, one of the things that seems clear, and you mentioned this, is that that some still high percentage of companies have policies saying they won't rehire employees, even if they were good employees, right? Not just the people left under a cloud. This is actually anathema to so many of them. So absolutely, have sort of this, you're either with us or against us type mentality,
or you're dead to me, or you work
you're
here.
You're dead to me, right?
Truly. Like, we don't even talk about those people. You're dead to me. I don't even remember their names. I won't talk about them.
I've had bosses like that where I've been in meetings. Yeah, I've had bosses been like that. We talk about somebody that left the company. Maybe it was like a sales meeting. And it's like, oh yeah, that was Joe's account. Who?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, come on. Right.
As if Joe did not actually bring that account in and tender it to have organic growth, and then hopefully leave it well, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I think this is one of the easiest things you can do to kill your company, is when you don't honor the contributions of people who are either with you or not with you any longer. Because employees who have strong personal brands today, those people who are high performers, who are driving businesses, they're going to have more influence, and they already have more influence in an organization today than they may have had even 20 years ago. And if they don't feel that they're going to be honored for their current contributions now and in the future, what's to say that they should stay around when there's other places to go?
Well, and you say that the people who have the hardest time with us are boomer bosses, and that still conflate this idea of loyalty with duration of tenure.
Yes.
And I find that sort of really ironic, because it really was in the boomer generation that really pioneered, this new form of resume that wasn't lifetime employment, but was multiple jobs. I mean, I there's no way I could fit my resume on one page. Right. Even before I started my company, 16 years ago. Right. And yeah, I remember going through the transition where people looked at me askance after I had gone from sort of one startup to another startup relatively quickly. It was like 2 years at that point. And the first company just didn't make it. And I left, 3 months before they closed their doors, to a point where, 15 years later, people are sort of looking down their noses at me because I'd stayed at one company for 7 years.
Exactly. Well, I think there's two things on that, the boomers thing. One is boomers, I think, many people got caught by 2 or 3 downturns, depending on where you are in the country, right? Mm-hmm. And so particularly the people in 2008, 2009, who may have been on the older edge of being boomers, who lost their jobs before they wanted to and then couldn't find them again. And it took a long time for them to get rehired. They're just, a lot of them, and I've talked to lots of them, are just trying to hang on to those jobs, right? They don't want to get priced out. They don't want to be old. There's some statistic in Silicon Valley that says there are more men getting plastic surgery today than there are women. There's just trying to stay young.
Because they're trying to stay young enough to be employable.
To be relevant, to be seemingly relevant, right? And so, these people are trying to hang on to their jobs at the same time as they see these younger employees like, I'm not getting what I want here, I'm off, right? So it feels twofold. One is they grew up thinking their parents were in jobs forever, and then the economy totally changed in the 80s and the 90s when publicly traded companies started shaving people for profit that they didn't really need to for the street, right? And lots of people got laid off. This changed the entire dynamic in the contract. But the myth of the golden watch, the myth of the, retirement party, the myth of those things, still prevails, even though they're really not real. They haven't been real for over 20 years. So we're sort of living with this ideal that is no longer true. And I think some boomers that I speak with are sort of living in the disappointment of where they are versus where they had planned. And then they see these particularly younger people, under 35, 36-year-olds who look like they're not loyal, meaning they don't stay around. They don't do their time. When, of course, if they were their children, they would say, don't leave, if you're not getting what you want, if you don't have work-life balance, if the company is not going anywhere, you got to get out of there so you don't look stale, right? So it is definitely a push me, pull me on that for sure.
Well, I think one of the things that's changed, though, is that for boomers, and maybe for Gen X as well, is the idea of going back to work at a previous employer was perceived to be, coming back with your tail between your legs.
Exactly.
As opposed to you're not returning as conquering hero or somebody that they really want. You're going back because that's all you could get, basically, whether that was true or not. But I think that's what kept a lot of people from even
thinking about it,
considering it as an option.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things on that. One is absolutely, you don't want to be seen like I didn't make it out there in the real world, right? Number one. Number two, because so many companies had either written or oral, like in the air policies about this, like you're dead to me or you work for me kind of ideas, it wasn't even a possibility. So if they, they wouldn't even considered it. And I think what we're seeing today is, the talent pool for the people who are the talent pool for educated, skilled, relevant workers who keep learning with the economy and with the changes in the market, because that's a key
point, right? Keep learning. Keep
learning is relatively small to the people to the need. Right. And no matter where you are in the country, really, I mean, even small towns that don't have a lot of economy, those people who keep learning, keep doing things, innovate, those people are in high demand. And if you just cut yourself off from anybody who ever worked for you, you are cutting yourself off from a lot of people. It's sort of inverse proportion to how old your company is. Right. So which is very short-sighted because no company looks today like they looked 10 years ago.
Sure. Well, and the value of the boomerang, as you said, the boomerang is not just a function of an employee coming back.
Oh, absolutely not.
But it's that employee could come back as a customer.
As a customer, as a contractor,
as a referral,
as an advocate. The best company, the gold standard company of this, I think, is McKinsey. And they hire people and then those people become their clients. That's how that sort of works, right? And a lot of McKinsey people don't actually return to McKinsey. Some do, but a lot of them don't. But they are still in the McKinsey family. And what McKinsey has done is created an incredibly strong alumni program to the point that in every single office, they have one person dedicated to alumni of their practice because they obviously see the value of their alumni becoming clients who can then become bigger clients and then bigger clients, And if you think about it as an ecosystem, I think McKinsey has really set the gold standard on that we can learn a lot from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly have experienced this idea of employees leaving, going to work for customers going to work as consultants that do stay loyal. I mean, they enjoyed working at the company, and for whatever reason, it wasn't working out at that time. And yeah, they were incredibly valuable resource as an outsider.
Incredibly. So in my company, which is now 15 years old, we have rehired over a dozen people now, and we have over another half dozen, 6 or 7, who are either our clients or were clients. And about 90% of our alumni, for lots of different reasons, they didn't want to be in PR anymore, they went back to school, they retired. About 90% of them are, positive contributors to our bottom line in some way, shape, or form. So, it seems pretty straightforward to me. It doesn't seem like rocket science. And that's probably that's my short-sightedness on it. But
well, and so you talked about the fact that sort of the contract has changed and between employee and employee. And there's really sort of mixed data about how employees sort of view their careers. And I wonder if some of the examples that you give are they more relevant specifically sort of the tech segment? Because I was reading part of a book written by a guy named Tyler Cowen called The Complacent Class, and there was a factoid in there that I thought was interesting. It was saying the percentage of workers who switch jobs each year has declined by nearly 50% in the last 15 years. And
switch jobs every year has declined. You mean voluntarily?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a different.
Well, no, it was a combination of voluntary and involuntary, I think, as his stat was. But what he was saying is it's saying that the enticement of leaving for a better job is actually diminishing these days because people seem to be more. Well, the name of his book is The Complacent Class, so that employers are more complacent. I mean, what you're talking about sort of doesn't really speak to that. I mean,
no, I don't see that. It doesn't mean it's not true in different places in the country. What I see across the country in the sectors that I intersect with all the time is that the learning that you have to do to stay relevant is tremendous. Like my company, public relations firm, and today we're a public relations and digital marketing firm. And how we do the job today has morphed 3 times since when I started the company. We couldn't even imagine doing the things that we do today to do our work, when I started the company. And that is true in almost every category. And I think technology, tech engineers, their life is getting turned upside down by agile tech, by sprinting instead of sequential work and all this kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Right. And, if you don't learn how to be an agile contributor, man, you're going to be out of a job, right? The same is true if you're in my business and you can't do Instagram and you're 50 years old and you don't want to do Instagram, well, too bad, because you're just not going to be as relevant because, it's just not. Whatever is current is what's current. So I think the speed of learning has increased. The need for speed of learning has increased over time. The complacent work, I would say if there's complacency in the workforce, if you're saying workforce versus workplace.
Workforce, yes.
Workforce. I'm not sure it's complacency as much as please let me stay here until I'm done. Because we know at any moment we have no control over our companies. We have no control if they're going to get bought by somebody else, if they're going to downsize, if they're going to spin off a business unit and goes to somebody else. We see this every single day in the business news. You have no control over the things that could impact your actual, having a job. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I agree with him. I'll have to read his book. But that would be a good point-counterpoint conversation.
Yeah, bring back the old Saturday Night Live show. Shayna? Well, I think it is interesting because, one of the things that this author argues, and we're seeing perhaps, some of this is occurring. You see some of the numbers in our economy is that, productivity is way down. I think that's at a low since World War II. We're at a point now. The number of percentage of people that are moving between states is inward. The intermigration in the United States has dropped off dramatically. Another statistic. That's the one he quoted here.
But where did they go? I mean, where do those people go? Because the people who would move from
they used to do it for jobs. They used to do it for jobs.
But the cost of living from point A to point B is so dramatically different. I don't know that it's I don't know. And the quality of life is so different that I think there are other things around jobs that are impacting that.
You're just trying to get people not to move to California.
Well, I love California, and it is a great place to be. And if you're an engineer, you can get a job here tomorrow. But California, people come to California, and if you leave California, most people don't come back because the cost of living here, you get adjusted to it, and then you go somewhere else. Like we have a lot of people move to Madison, a lot of people move to Minneapolis, and those are not inexpensive places to live. But what your dollar buys is so much more than it buys. People get used to it, right?
Interesting. So people leave San Francisco to go to Madison, Wisconsin.
They do.
I went the other way from Madison, Wisconsin to San Francisco. So.
I know you did.
long time ago. Somehow the cost of the winter outweighed the cost of the living, right?
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about back to a culture of return. Mm-hmm. And you talk about that as you create a culture of return. It creates loyalty, it creates a culture of people staying. And you had sort of 4 or 5 elements of that I'd sort of be interested to go into. So why don't you talk about a culture of appreciation that you need to create within a company? So define what that means.
So a culture of appreciation is one where you actually say out loud, and you do not imply by giving people a paycheck, that you appreciate people's work. And this is something that for me was very challenging to learn because I grew up with a father who is a cardiac surgeon, and please and implied were thank you because, if I said please and thank you every time in the operating room late, someone would die on the table.
That's a quote, right?
That is a quote. That's what he said to me over and over and over again. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of research on this from Wharton, from Harvard, from Yale, the London School of Economics, and other places around people perform better and faster with more efficiency when they feel appreciated. So actually being a culture of appreciation where you say out loud, you did a good job, thank you for your effort, thank you for making this happen, thank you for throughout your day. They can measure it, and they have measured it right to the bottom line from anywhere between, and there's new data on this, so anywhere between sort of 7% profit to up to 21% profit. So teams that are appreciative of each other, are appreciated by other people, just do a better job and faster than teams that don't. And we're human, right? So when you don't feel appreciated, all you do is grind. You grind on it all day long. Rah, 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 rah. Of course that's inefficient. Of course you're not going to do your best job if you're grinding on the fact that people don't appreciate your work. It is one of the biggest swings you can do in a company. It's just move from just sort of doing the work to actually taking a moment to say thank you for the work. Mm-hmm. And only if it's good work. Don't say thank you for work that's not good, right? But most people do good work. And more people will do better work if you said thank you for it. And there is a lot of data on that to say. So a culture of appreciation, which is not, there are many places I go.
How do you teach a CEO that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a matter you can show people the facts, and the facts, they can be skeptical or accepting.
Story. Yeah. So what I did was share my own story on it. And so we track every 15 minutes of our day, right? And we can see in any moment of time, I can see who's efficient and who's not versus the plan, at least. Mm-hmm. And so over a month, when I started doing it, I felt like such a tool. I was like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm just, I'm faking it. But it got easier and easier and easier. And then other people were doing it. And then we talked about it. And then we did this thing for a staff meeting. Every staff meeting for 8 weeks, we did appreciation. And appreciation was at the end of the staff meeting, you find 3 people in that staff meeting, and you told them what you appreciated about their day, about them in the past week.
Which, by the way, on the surface, sounds like one of those really bad Thanksgiving dinner rituals where you go around and talk about what you're thankful for. But go ahead, yes.
It does sound terrible. And it was like, oh my God, this is so awkward. But you have to practice it because it's not normal for us, particularly in a business situation. So I forced it on the team, and it was like a little awkward, and they got easier, and then got easier. And then people were saying please and thank you throughout the day. And then over 2 months, I was able to see, the workflow is basically the same, but the number of non-billable hours went down. Well, that's money.
Yeah, well, yes.
So I share my own experience and how hard it was for me. And when I can say that to CEOs who are looking at me like I'm crazy, I just share my own experience and I ask them to try it. So, and then I practice with them. Let's practice how you might say a thing, let's practice how you might appreciate. Say, who do you think did a good job last week? Who went out of their way for you? Someone went out of their way for you. No matter who you are, no matter how much of a jerk you are, someone went out of your way for you. Why don't you just go thank them for it? Oh, but Lee, what if they're expecting a raise for that? Well, then tell them they don't get a raise for that. You're just appreciating their work. So part of it is like what's pent up and what people think they're going to ask for, what the expectation will be if you say thank you. If you get rid of that and just have this even playing field of appreciation, good work gets appreciated, then you don't have to worry about it, right? But when you don't have when your paycheck is an implied thank you, everything is suspect.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So one of the things that really happens when you have this culture of appreciation is you start being human again. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot to be said for being human. I mean, we're in a world when, a lot of pressures to automate more and more work functions that are taking place across all disciplines.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, it's still about relationships, still about a person to person. And yeah, if you can feel like this person really cares about what I'm doing, then yeah, everybody starts pulling together in a much broader fashion.
And I think that it's a business decision. I mean, you could take it all the way down to a business decision and take the empathy out of it. I wouldn't, because I'm an empathetic person, but you could just take it, if I have less griping going on, I should do everything I can to have less griping going on, because less griping is more inefficiency. More inefficiency is more waste. More waste is less profit. Mm-hmm. And what the variable is a human being. Well, human beings matter. Human beings, their feelings matter about their work.
Yeah, feelings matter in general. I mean, one thing that I work with people on is in coaching and so on is, and this is hard for people to do. The same thing. It's, asking somebody, like if you meet a potential business mm-hmm. customer for the first time, asking them not just say, hey, how you doing? But saying, so how are you doing?
Yeah.
The difference between, hey, how you doing versus, so how are you doing? Huge difference, 180-degree difference. And
looking people in the eye.
And suddenly people think you start caring.
Yeah. Because you probably do.
You do if you're going to ask the question that way.
Yeah.
You definitely are. And it's extremely difficult for people to do.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think it's also men have a harder time than women. And sometimes women get judged harder for like being too empathetic. Like, how are you? What's going on? All that stuff. And down the middle is probably where we all need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm just sitting here thinking of examples of people that are too empathetic. Yes. So the other thing you talk about is a culture of leadership.
Yeah.
And you call leadership the new black.
Mm-hmm.
And you cite that the millennials, at least that your research showing, that they mm-hmm. often cite that there's, lack of potential leadership opportunities as a reason to leave. So mm-hmm. I found that sort of interesting because, a lot of times you're reading leadership books and I interview guests about leadership on the show is, you start sort of the leader within, right? I mean, sort of me as an individual, it's not like the position needs to be bestowed on me.
Right. Well, I think there's two things on that. One, I think millennials think they can lead from any seat in the boat. So they don't have to have the CEO moniker to be able to be a leader. And I think that's true.
Well, if that was the case, why would they think they have to leave in order to lead?
Because they're not being appreciated for their leadership capability.
Okay. There we go.
They're not being acknowledged for the fact that they don't have to be the top dog to play a leadership role in getting things done.
They just don't get appreciated for it.
And they're not appreciated for it in the
which
role.
Everybody does. That's not a millennial thing. That's everybody.
Which is my other point. If you can create an environment where millennials thrive, everybody thrives. But the reverse is not necessarily true.
The reverse being?
if you create environments where boomers thrive, millennials may not. And if you create an environment for Gen Xers, millennials also may not. They might, but they may not. But if you create an environment that millennials thrive in, all millennials, not all, but you know what I mean, generally, millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, and silents will thrive because it is an environment where you understand your role. It is an environment that where your work is appreciated. It is an environment where your personal potential is being mapped against your career versus your personal potential being mapped against the company. And it is an environment where opportunity to craft a career is placed at the center and on me, not on the company, to actually make things happen.
So shouldn't leaders, corporate leaders, someone like yourself running a company, shouldn't they make the assumption that boomers should have thrived already? How much emphasis do they put on that as opposed to boomers, the cohort that makes up the bulk of their employee force?
I think boomers did thrive. And then they got the boomers were there are so many boomers. There were so many boomers, right? Number two is our economy was expanding at an unprecedented rate that many economists say will never happen again in history because it never had happened before in history where the economy expanded at such an exponential rate over 25 years, the same 25 years where these boomers were coming into their own and coming into the workforce and then retiring. So we have a lot of people, almost 80 million people coming in at the same time as our economy, the U.S. economy, is expanding at such a rate to be able to absorb all these boomers. Then you have the economy shrinking and then shrinking and then shrinking again because that's what economies do. At the same time as boomers who are used to a certain amount of freedom, they're used to a certain amount of achievement, they're used to a certain amount of compensation, start losing all those things. But their lifestyle doesn't necessarily match the fact that they've lost it, right? They were living beyond their means, but they were making it do because opportunity was so ripe. And you saw it in 2000, and we definitely saw it in 2008, 2009, where how people were living far outstripped the reality of the situation, right? And they got caught. So they got caught. Many boomers got caught. I was obviously I'm 52 now. That was 16 years ago in 2000. So I was 42 years old, basically, right?
You're barely a boomer.
I'm the last year of boomers. So thank God, because the 60% of the money that I had saved that I lost, I've recovered and more. But if I was 64, I have many people who were 64, 65 at that time, who did not get to retire. They were thankful to keep their jobs, and they're now retiring now at 73, 74, 75. So boomers had a time, but I don't think boomers took advantage of that time to actually prepare for a future because it was just we were conditioned. It's always going to be good. It's always going to be good. Xers, it's a smaller group of Xers, 45 million Xers in this country. The numbers should be that all these boomers go into the sunset, and these Xers are just filling in opportunities, right?
But boomers aren't leaving, though.
But they're not leaving, and millennials are like a tsunami coming out of college, right? So right now, millennials are between 16 and 36, and they come out of college. They're moving home, so they don't have to make as much, and they want to work, and they're more relevant. Right. And they know more technology. They can do things faster. And so Xers really, although the numbers would say that, of course, they had tons of opportunity because there weren't enough of them to fill the jobs that we had in the year 2000, which is the experience I was telling you before. Right. That this economy we're in now has not presented that opportunity. So I think that if we've learned anything is that we can't count on an economy to take care of us. We can't count on companies to take care of us. Leaders now need to be thinking about talent becoming a talent brand as employees, as opposed to an employer brand, so that they can attract the best people who have the strongest personal brands, who are worried about their personal brands and being able to craft the career that they want, where they think about the companies that they've worked for as sort of bumper stickers on their career, not as hallmarks of themselves.
Got it. Yeah, you're ending on the same note we started, which is Look at that. She summed it up again. No, that's a perfect way to exit on that. Lee, so thanks so much for joining me again.
Andy, thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So tell folks how they can connect with you and find out more about your book and your business.
The best place to go is my website, which is www.leecaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com, or on Twitter, I'm at Lee Caraher. And I'm blogging about all this kind of stuff all the time. So that's where you can find my books and my company.
It's okay. And the book's available on Amazon and all your favorite places?
All your favorite places.
Excellent. Well, again, Lee, as always, great to talk with you. And friends, thanks for spending this time with me. Remember, come back tomorrow. Join me again. Until then, take a minute if you can. Go to iTunes, leave a review, subscribe to Accelerate. We want to hear what we can do to help you better. So again, thanks for joining me. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.